Peace, peace, peace and oneness, love, greetings. Yeah, I got a lot going on right here. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the chat. Many of you might get here long after the live has completed. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Not Meek. We got one of our moderators in here already. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Quasha, what's going on? We're going to allow a couple of more people to get in here. This is actually going to be a good talk. Your favorite nurse. Hey. Come on up in here. I want to have a wonderful reasoning with you all. And let me tell you something. This talk, we need to share it. We need to share it. We need to share this talk. I'm here. We're live. We're live. Oh, I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful for you. Ujo, what's happening, baby? I am so grateful for all of you. This is going to be, you know what? The elders have already been on my mind, and we're going to come back to that at the end of this talk. But it's so wonderful. This what we're talking about right now is you know, we're all the good women, virtuous women, coming back to this divine femininity. Um, And so I want to talk about this a little bit. So listen, i- i- I'm here. Hey, Astral Talk. I'm here. Void of my image, you have my voice. So what does that mean? That means that you can sit back, you can relax. You don't have to focus on the screen. You could be doing something while you're listening, or you could just sit back and close your eyes and visualize us sitting around a campfire and having this talk, right? Having this reasoning. And then we also want to share this because even if you are not a woman, bad woman, good versus bad, whatever any of that means, it doesn't matter. We you've got a woman in your life, and some of the things that I'm going to be getting off into, it may ruffle some feathers. And so this is why I say we need to share this, because it's only until we become uncomfortable that we will change. Once we become uncomfortable, we will change. And it's mighty funny how different people, different groups of people, whether they be men, whether they be um, anybody that the melanated woman feels does not understand or overstand her plight. We feel that nobody has the right to speak on us or to us. And unfortunately, even as it relates to us, even when it comes on to us, we don't want us talking to us, about us, or on us, or any of that. Well, tonight, brothers and sisters, I'm going to talk to us, about us, for us, and ain't nothing you can do about it. Right? Because there's a lot going on in society. There's a lot that we have normalized. There is a lot that we sit back and go along with, and we won't even shake a stick at it because we don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, because everybody these days are fragile. Everybody is so fragile. Everybody, and my thing is this. My thing is, if everybody needs therapy, right? If everybody needs therapy, if everybody is a victim, then who's healing? That's the sad part, is that every look, everywhere we look, everywhere we turn, somebody is digging up, rehashing, living up, living out old wounds, right? And the thing about an old wound Old wounds aren't good to carry. Like you don't want an old wound. Would you walk around with a wound, an open wound that you've had for 3 years? You would absolutely not. Where you at, your favorite nurse? If you're a nurse, then talk to them in a chat about the dangers of walking around with an untreated open wound. Mm. And so, if this is not something that we would do physically, why is it that we want to keep talking about these things and hashing them up and carrying all of this weight and all of this heavy burdens, and here we are getting ready to move into the second month of this year, and people are still talking about how heavy they are. People don't want to change. People are still bringing that same energy into the new timeline. But I want to talk a little bit about what is a good woman. Why? Because I think I am one. I mean, I'm not perfect. Who is? Right? But I think that I have a little bit of authority. There was a sister many years ago, Shahrazad Ali, that came out with this book, right? And she came out, she was very controversial back in the day. I think there have been a lot more women since then that have been equally as vocal, kind of using that same tone, and we have become a little bit more accepting of it, but we still, you know anytime a sister comes to us and tells us about ourselves and calls us out on some of the nonsense and some of the things that we're doing, we have a whole bunch of adjectives to describe this sister, or a whole bunch of nouns. She's a hater, or who does she think she is? Well, and this is what I'm saying, if we can't take correction, if we can't take correction from each other, and especially there's so many of you all that are single, so many single women that actually desire to be in a relationship. Mm, mm. You desire to be in a relationship badly, many of you. And if you can't take correction from your own sisters, right? Meaning the female species, gender, you know, if we can't listen to each other and call each other out without thinking that somebody's hating on you, somebody's jealous of you, somebody want what you have, then darling, not only are you misled, but you are delusional. Delusional, you know, and it's really, really sad that this is where we've come. All right, let's break this down a little bit. When you hear, for example, religious people, right, whether they be the um, Christians, the Muslims, um, everybody, different types of cultural, spiritual backgrounds. Everybody talks about virtuous women, good women. Everybody wants a good, godly woman, a good, God fearing woman, good, holy woman. And sometimes we can just go ahead and shorten this to a good woman, right? What is a virtuous woman? A lot of people don't even know what being virtuous is, right? But we've heard this before. A virtuous woman versus women of the world. I mean, we're all in this world, right? But we need to kind of reframe how we look at that. Mm, reframe how we look at that. When we look at what a lot of people think a virtuous woman is, especially coming from the religious, they have this, and I'm not even coming from like the Bible, because like the Bible has its own definition, religion has its own definition of what a virtuous woman is, and historically it's been mischaracterized as a woman who was quiet, always compliant, she's restrained, she's demure, she's differential. But in truth, virtue has never meant weakness. Virtue is not being a woman who is submissive, right? Virtue is mastery. Now, I'm not saying that submission is a good or a bad thing. It just depends on who and what you're submitting to. I prefer compromise. But virtue to me is more about mastery, mastering oneself, because a virtuous woman is one who understands herself, right? She has control over herself. She governs her impulses, and we align our choices with natural and universal law. we She is a woman who is discerning rather than being reactive all the time, right? We make it a point to be intentional rather than being impulsive. So when we look at that from the other side of the coin, what is often considered to be a worldly woman is not just about a woman whose engagement, with the material world is evident, because she seeks pleasure, or she wants to be seen, or she's attention seeking. Basically, what we're talking about is a sister who is unconscious. So, worldliness doesn't define being in the world and like I said, where she goes. And all of this does make a difference, right? Because when you are a woman of virtue, or a woman who has aligned herself with purpose and with self mastery, there are places that you don't go by virtue. There are people that you don't align yourself with by virtue, because you don't want to be influenced. You don't want your spirit to be contaminated. You don't want any of that smoke. Mm. For me, a worldly woman is a woman who is ruled by this vivaciousness, by this insatiable appetite. She needs validation at every turn from everybody. And she appreciates and often goes after the external reward rather than the inner reward or jewels that we can receive. She's just a sister who's unconscious. So when we make that distinction, it's not about us feeling like, oh, we're better than, or this is a woman with, this is some sort of a moral judgment. Hey, Trisha, I need to talk with you anyway. I'm going to get with you. This is not a moral judgment, right? It's pointing out some very necessary truths. When Let's go back to why some of this is, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And when I look at what's being reflected back to us in society, the way the sisters are carrying themselves, these attention seekers, and the validation, it's sad and it's sick at the same. It's sickening at the same time, right? Um, we can go back to the so-called beginning of time. I was just teaching on this in a class recently, right? The story that we as women, that by nature we're deceptive or we're spiritually dangerous, right? Because that story in the Eden, that Garden of Eden, is that's not the truth. That was more about a political narrative. So that myth, which is not a true story, that myth, you know, it's been culturally interpreted in a way that it puts a very unfair or disproportionate blame on us as women, framing us as the reason why the whole of humanity has fallen. Mm. But there was a shared responsibility, but nobody wants to talk about that. And as time went on and on and on and on and on, that particular Eve tricked Adam. She was deceived by the snake and she tricked Adam. That particular um, narrative was used to manipulate society, manipulate females into subordination, right? And whereas we don't have the spiritual authority. This is what I was teaching on in the class recently, whereas women in positions of leadership, especially in the very beginnings of spirituality, of politics, all of this, women in Congress and women, being so vocal and having a podcast. This would have never been, something not even hundreds of years ago, but we could take it back into within the past 100 years. Right? And the fear that society has always had about women was not that, you know, we were weak, it was that we were highly influential. We were highly influential. We have the ability to, so when you look at that influence that it was said that Eve had over Adam, right? This is the influence that is innately in a woman. The woman can speak things. This is why in certain cultures, in the Yoruba culture, you see that speaking sweetness. That when we speak of Oshun, you speak of a sweetness of honey on the lips. Meaning what? It's not really that you're walking around with honey on your lips. Now, is it? What we're talking about is the sweetness in which a woman brings forth her words, her healing, right? Because we have the ability to heal or destroy. They say life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? And this is something that we as women, we really need to master, because it's kind of a hidden power, right? Our When we talk about, and I just need to kind of slow walk this for a minute and talk about how we've always been looked at as women before I start getting off into the nitty gritty of this. Because when we look at history and culture, our roles have never been just set as one thing. A lot of society have always wanted us to be nurturers, healers, teachers. But other times in other cultures and histories, we were entrusted with warfare. Let's look at the women of the Dahomey, right? you know Women were trusted with spiritual leadership, right? There were women warriors, there were women priestesses, and women rulers. And that fact, and it is a fact, it disrupts the idea that submission is a natural female state. See, that bothers the mm, dare I say, sacred masculine, because that wouldn't be sacred masculine who wanted to shroud the divine feminine, now would it? So, what we need to look at here is the fact that womanhood is adaptive. We are constantly changing. This is why our cycles are relative to the moon. This is why our emotions are always relative to water. It is because womanhood is adaptive. We change like the weather. And here's the funny part: when societies actually honored women in our greatest capacities, those societies flourished. They grew, you know, in contrast, I guess you could say, to some of these empires that were solely male dominated, right? When we look at what natural tendencies are, our natural tendencies are receptivity, creativity, hopefully emotional intelligence, although not many women, especially if you turn on any of your social media channels nowadays, you see the way that these sisters are behaving. I'm talking about old and new alike. It is sickening. Somebody let somebody else know, right? But the thing about nature, although we do have natural tendencies, again, like nurturing, receptivity, all of these things, the thing about nature is that nature also allows for adaptation, fluctuation. The wind can blow in a couple of different directions, water can flow in a couple of different directions. So, a virtuous woman, get this, might be soft in one season and fierce in another season. We may at one point in one time heal, or we may have to defend. We may choose to create life, and it is our choice, or remain solitary for those that do not want children or those that do not want a husband. Being a woman does not automatically put you in a category to say, you know what, yes, I have to get married and have a husband and have children. No, that's the American dream. Well, that's everybody's dream. You know, we're taught from the very time that we're infant little baby girls that this is the way that it should be, and it's this whole idea gets perpetuated generation after generation after generation. And while there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing that can absolutely be 100% right with it for everyone either. So when we look at what is a good woman or a righteous woman or a virtuous woman, it, it, it's hard to define it as a role according to what a man would say. Oh, you know, she's soft and she's this and she's that. But what if the man is soft too, and both of y'all about to get beat up, and your woman can actually fight? What you gonna do? You just gonna take that butt whooping? Now let's look at how like the church calls them Jezebels. I want to kind of break down this whole uh Jezebel thing. Hi, Malcolm. Stick with me, and you're gonna figure this one out. You're gonna figure this one out, right? So let's look at how when you and I grew up with my grandmother, you know, in the church, and she talked about the Jezebel. Well, not she alone, but you always heard about the Jezebel as an archetype. Um, they speak about this biblically. You know, they could say it's like a whore or you know, this archetype. Unfortunately, it's been misused to shame women solely about sexuality and having a certain amount of confidence. But let's break it down from its true meaning and from a more psychological perspective than moral, because everybody's morals are different. And when we break down the whole right and wrong, listen, tomato, tomato. But when we look at Jezebel, it represents a woman who, and while yes, there is certain connections to sexual energy and sexual power, I want to just void that for 1 second, because just let's just look at it as power. But that power is separate from accountability, because I want us to understand that it's not only sexuality that the Jezebel energy aligns with, right? It's influence, but there's no wisdom underlying that influence, right? It's not, it's immaturity. They may be very beautiful, this Jezebel archetype in physical appearance, but there's emotional immaturity, that lack of accountability. And this particular archetype, it reflects a woman who seeks control through attention. Look at me, pick me, seduction or manipulation, right? So it's not just about sexuality, although that's a part of it. It's more about a woman who seeks control, hear me again, through attention, manipulation, and seduction, rather than through her own integrity and self-knowledge, her knowledge of self. Now, on the other hand, a virtuous woman or a righteous sister, she understands her power and she contains it. In other words, she know how to use what she has. She doesn't need to uh siphon or vampire energy from other people, because she knows how to go within and get it, right? So this issue, when we look at this woman who you want to call her worldly, you want to call her Jezebel, you want to call them the whole type, you know, or whatever you want, hotep, whole type, whatever. It's a lack of containing that feminine power. because not all power is loud and aggressive and flirtatious. And, sometimes power and beauty are in silence. It's in what you don't say. It's in sometimes you might be right in a situation. You might be arguing with your man or something, and you might be right in a situation. But a Jezebel archetype or the Jezebel spirit is going to have to kind of raise it up, beast it up on a man a little bit more and a little bit more, just to prove her point, instead of, just sometimes it's okay. It's okay to be right and shut up too. I know it's hard. It's hard. It's hard for us as women, right? Trust me. I want to talk about social media and what it has done. Because when you look now and you just take your pick. I can call them out. I can throw out the names of the different platforms in the air, and I see the older sisters, the younger sisters. Everybody is seeking. Everybody want to be seen, and we do some of the. Come on, sisters. And like I said, you don't have to be a woman listening to this. If you're a man, you've got women in your life, sisters, daughters, cousins, aunties, mothers, grannies, if they're still alive, because some of these people are grandmas out here still cutting it up and acting a fool. And I don't call that a virtuous woman. And these church sisters, please, please, somebody tell them to have several seats, because I don't know, like there's a power and authority that comes from the creator that a lot of women are either born with, or it's a seed that grows inside of them that is placed there by the creator. And a lot of these women in these religious institutions and so-called places of power are not being called by spirit. They're being called by themselves. They're being called by their egos. And this shows when you look at your churches and you look at these people doing these podcasts and these women, oh my gosh. And somebody sit these sisters down who are up in the church preaching in the pulpit talking about you leading God's people, but you got the stockings and you got the 6-inch stilettos and you got the cleavage showing on your shirt, and you got enough makeup on to take it off and paint a painting on a canvas. You got the yep, I'm calling it out. Fake fingernails so tall, I don't even know how you're peeling bananas. I don't get it. I don't get it. And you justify this though. Because when you look at any culture where women have been considered godly, holy, virtuous, righteous, they've always they've always been dressed modestly. They've always been covered to some degree, whether they're rocking a three-fourths of cloth, whether it's just, throwing on a head wrap, right? There's a difference. And when you're going in your churches and you're going and seeing these iyas and even these, the African garments, would suffice and they're looking beautiful. But now you got the sisters who want to kind of bring in that worldly club looking attire and try to mix it, put a little African, head wrap on with a mini skirt and a halter top. And it's, girl, sit down somewhere. There has to be a difference that's being made. And I'm not upset about if you pimps and hoes party for her 60th birthday. And I'm going to be honest, to each their own. I'm not judging anybody for how they want to live their life, but I'm sure your auntie not running around here talking about she a virtuous, righteous woman either. I'm talking about these righteous women and those that are seeking to be righteous, those that are seeking to align themselves with godliness to some sort of degree. And all these people running around here talking about Hotep All these people running around here talking about Ashe. I'm talking about these women, these sisters. All these people running around here talking about praise the Lord. All these sisters running around here talking about alhamdulillah and all of these different things. But there is no truth in it. There's a poem I wrote many years ago, and it said, the head wrap don't make you a queen. The head wrap don't make you a queen. It's not the outward appearance. It's not what you put on that makes you a righteous woman. And this isn't for you if you still want to go to the club and shake ass and all of that. This is not the talk for you. And it's okay. I'm okay with that. I said who it was for. I said it was for those that will consider themselves, those that are looking, those that have the question. The brother said this is the $1 million question. When we look at social media, the confusion between visibility and authority is crazy. These platforms reward you when you exaggerate. They reward you. And so this is kind of perpetuating this delusion that our sisters are going through, because like I said, it's any and all ages, from the young ones to the old. Everybody wants to be seen. They're doing these crazy dances and coming on the internet half naked. Just, it's ridiculous. But if this is the place where you're operating from, when many of you are these people, not you all, but many of these people who do this, they're trying to go on social media to get money. And the platforms are going to reward you for the performance rather than the purpose. See, when I was doing social media regularly, you know, with all these thousands and thousands, you all know I deleted my main channel. Close to 50,000 subscribers. For what? I don't need that. That goes to show you when you're ready to disconnect from the world and you're ready to get back to your God within, right? Because social media rewards the performance. I didn't want to perform. I'm not here to entertain you. Training sisters to monetize desirability rather than cultivate depth, speak truth, speak honesty. Somebody like this video won't, probably, unless you all share it, it won't get up there. But I bet you if I was, you know, showing some cleavage and showing myself and, you know, licking my lips and, you know, going on, ain't no telling how many views I'd get. But what happens is that creates a false sense of power. And what it's also doing is diminishing your self-respect. See, a godly woman, a righteous woman, a virtuous woman is not anti-visible or anti-visibility, not wanting to be seen at all. It's just that she's intentional about it, just like myself. What did I say? I said, I don't want the visibility anymore. It's no longer about being the observed for me. It's about becoming the observer. So I'm very intentional about, you know, when I come on social media and what I say. Because a virtuous woman also understands that not all eyes deserve access and not all attention is reverence. I understand that my true power is curated and is not, and the revolution should not be televised. We got to start tapping into learning how to be more mature. That's the issue. We don't want to be mature, and maturity is almost a true measure of godliness when it comes to being a godly woman. The real kind of line of demarcation or the divide line between a virtuous woman and a misguided sister is not perfection. It's maturity. It's not purity, it's maturity. A mature woman regulates her emotions. She understands consequence and accepts responsibility for her influence. We don't confuse desire with destiny. Watch out now. Let me back that thing up like a truck. A virtuous woman doesn't confuse desire with destiny, nor do we confuse impulse with intuition. Hmm? We can we can embody sensuality without um being reckless, and we can show compassion without diminishing ourselves and putting ourselves last, like many of us do when we want to heal the world, or we feel like there's a calling for us to do this, that, or the third. But moreover, when we step into that space of being a mature woman, that allows room for us to grow. Now, many of us sisters, we move in and out of godliness because, like all things in life, it's cyclical. It's not linear. Everything in the universe is in motion. So sometimes falling out of alignment happens, and that doesn't mean that it's failure. But when you remain in a fallen state or remain unconscious, well, then you have failed. Nobody don't want to hear that. That's okay. I was checking, seeing, are y'all with me? Let me know something if you in the chat now, because I know sometimes that's like I just stop talking because I say people don't want to hear the truth. People want to be entertained, but I got to tell you the truth. If I'm gonna say anything, if I'm gonna open my mouth at all, I would rather say something that would help purify your soul. We as women, we've always served as vessels of vessels. This is why we're emotional. Emotions are related to water, and we've been vessels of healing and prophecy and revelation. And I had a dream, Martin Luther King, the other day. You know, a lot of religious spaces, your churches, your places, they're more filled with women than men because women are naturally attuned to that divine communion. Now, the men aren't, but it's just something about that relationship between the woman and wisdom and inner knowing. This is why most very powerful men sought the counsel of their women. Pontius Pilate, woman came to him and said, listen, don't kill that man. If you kill that man, it's going to be a problem. Right? So, I was teaching in my class the other day that when you look at a lot of um the ritual garments that are worn by um preachers and popes and imams, and when you look at their robe, their long dress type garments, it symbolically kind of mirrors the feminine form, kind of representing flow and receptivity, right? And it's not that they're imitating women by putting on this attire, but when a man steps into a sacred role, they have to adopt a feminine symbolism, so to speak, because that divine communication, it has to move through a receptive vessel. Are you with me? Hmm? Most women are highly intuitive, right brained, operating more so off the right side of the brain, where men are more logical and operating off of the left side of the brain, more mathematical, more figuring things out. Women, we just want to wing it, and when we can't put it together and fix it, what do? We come to you men. Fix it for me, baby. Right? So when a man does that, he and I shocked a couple of the people in the class when I dropped that on them, because people had never looked at it like that. And the wigs too, is one of the sisters pointed out in the class. You look at your judges, they have the long robes and the wigs because is that the divine feminine is something about that. And I'm not, that's a story for another day, but it's not about superiority. It's about function because creation listens through the feminine because creation is a feminine um, attribute. Yes, yes, yes. And I ain't never been wrong. That's right, Trisha. That's right, right? So when we look at that, that's something that we also need to kind of consider. Another thing that I think that we have a serious issue with as women is comparing ourselves to one another. Comparing yourself to another woman. Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. And it's one of the most corrosive forces that's acting on us as women today. When we as women measure ourselves against each other, whether it be beauty, booty, desirability, success, how spiritual you are, what happens is when you measure yourself against another woman like that, you fracture your own identity. And not only do you fracture your own identity, but you stunt or you delay what you can become, right? Because comparison, what that does is it shifts the focus outward, outside of you, and that's going to breed what? More insecurity, resentment, and it's going to cause you to be an imitator and a hater. Yeah, there, I said it. It's going to cause imitation when you should be wanting to be authentically yourself. You should be wanting to be authentic. Comparison, it replaces that kind of I know who I am, that inner authority, and it puts in its place an external, like me rate you, you know? You say you rate me, but me not rate no man, you know. It's like an external ranking system, and it keeps us as women chasing, like the image of another woman rather than cultivating our own essence. Are y'all with me when I say that? And so when I talk about being a righteous woman or a godly woman, that requires presence. It requires self-knowledge. It requires gratitude, right? And you can't have any of those things if you're constantly comparing yourself. Grace and peace, Sister Denise Williams. You can't have those things if you're constantly comparing yourself to another woman, right? A woman who is aligned with the divine understands that her path might be a lonely path and that no one else's crown is going to fit your head. So comparison is not only the thief of joy, it's the thief of sovereignty, because you have to realize that you are a queen in your own right. You are an empress in your own right. Now, what I do not agree with are belief systems that, what's the word? I don't agree with belief systems that subjugate the woman, that, while I do feel that there is a divine order in the way that when a woman is aligned with a man, right? Well, if you're a godly woman, first of all, you're not going to align yourself with a weak man, now are you? Because you know that if you are a godly woman, then when you are seeking a man, you are going to be seeking the godly presence in that man. The godly presence, a godly, listen, real recognize real, like game recognize game, like God recognizes goddess. Right. So if you are, if you're a single sister, right, and you're walking the path of a righteous woman, like you're saying, you know what, auntie, yay yay, mama ningba, I listen, I don't go to clubs, I don't party, I don't sniff coke, I don't show my boobs all over the internet, and I just can't seem to align, I just can't seem to find that man that's for me. Like I'm doing all of the right things. Well, guess what, darling? Guess what you're not doing? You're not looking for the godly presence in a man because listen, hmm, you got to look for the godly presence in a man. And watch this. It doesn't always look like what you think it's going to look like either. It's not going to look like it's saying hotep. It's not going to look like it's walking up on you talking about grand risings queen. Some of those brothers can be some of the most toxic brothers as well. Why? Because they get around in these circles. They get so high to a point where they're so full of knowledge and everything that they forget that they are also under divine order and under divine law. You have to look for the godly presence in a man if you are wanting to be a godly woman, right? You can't be looking for a thug. Exactly. There you go. Performative versus embodiment. Absolutely 100%. You can't be looking for, you want this type of man and you want that type of man. And then when you're treated poorly in a relationship, who can you blame? It's because number one, you weren't fully aligned with the God principle, because the God principle, you like attracts like, right? And if you're on a high enough frequency, many of you are actually still single now because your frequency is probably so high that the person that's for you, that's going to be in that frequency, you're not in range. Like you might not be in range for a particular radio station. You got to keep driving for a while so that you can get close to the tower so you could pick up the signal. So until then, you're going to get a choppy station. You're going to get a choppy sound, or you're going to have to go ahead and tune in to another station. Right. So that's why a lot of you are single now. And then so what happens is that when you settle for a man that doesn't have the God presence inside of him, and trust me, it doesn't always look like somebody talking about praise Jesus and I love all my brothers. I love my Rasta brethren. I love my Hebrew Israelite brothers. I love my Muslim brothers. Salamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I love you all. I love the Christian brothers. Praise Jesus. I love all y'all at the end of the day. Okay. But just because you have this look or this appearance or this is a speech that you use doesn't also make you a godly man. And next time I do a talk, I'm going to do a talk on what a godly man is and what a godly man embodies and how a godly man is a leader. You listen, if you're not a godly man, you can't expect for a woman to want to follow you. I mean, and that's just the truth. Right. Pookie Ray Ray and them. You know what I'm saying? But you know, there's a difference between males and men, and there's a difference between females and women. So again, when we're talking about where are all of the good women, where are all of the righteous, virtuous women, I think many of them are still waiting to recognize themselves. Hmm? Many of them are still waiting to recognize themselves. And so if you are a godly man and you're looking for a godly woman, here's what I know that a lot of brothers will do. And it works in some cases, but it doesn't work in many cases. There are a lot of brothers who, just like women, will settle, right? And when I say settle, I mean, say for example, you're a Rasta brother and you know, there's no good Rasta queens in your area, but you meet a pretty Afrocentric sister, whatever this, that, and the third. And but the thing about it is that she still eats meat. She still eats pork, or she still eats beef, or whatever the she said, please do the topic on the godly man. God. But you can be a righteously aligned brother and according to you, there may not be any righteously aligned women, in your vicinity or that are coming across your radar. And so you meet a sister who may be a little Afrocentric. She may have certain qualities, but may not have them all. So you may come into her life and you may educate her. Remember that we don't rule by force, gentlemen. We don't rule by force. Not your woman. Right, you deal with those men with force. You deal with the corporate world with force. But we don't rule our women with force, gentlemen, but with diplomacy, logic, and by example. Right? So you might educate this sister and say, sister, you shouldn't be eating that pork. Or you shouldn't be eating that beef. Or that this acrylic stuff that you go and put on your fingernails is chemicals, and like that your nail beds, this stuff can seep into your system. Or you shouldn't be putting. Right now, we just recently heard a commercial in our car that was saying about if these women are wearing these perms, hair straighteners, and developed breast cancer, you may be entitled to some compensation. Are y'all just now figuring that part out? I've been natural for like 30 years, 35 years. I wouldn't even know what a perm felt like. You know what I'm saying? Like this, but then there are times that you brothers will meet these sisters and think that, you're going to come in and you're going to show, and these women don't want to be taught. See, a woman has to want to be taught. She has to be open and receptive. And remember that we said that women optimally operate in receptivity. Watch this. Now I'm going to flip it a little bit. So when a woman is not receptive, and that doesn't mean that she's going to be receptive to your BS, your manipulation, your gaslighting, and your narcissism, if any of those traits belong to you. But what it means is receptive to gentle guidance, because most women, and I don't mean this in a demeaning or degrading way, but in relationships, most women are like children. They want to be led, but they cannot be led by a weak man who has no direction, right? A woman has to be in a state of receptivity in order for you to be able to guide her and coach her into being, if you see certain amounts of qualities in her, but there are just a few little things that are lingering. So we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, are we? So this is where a little bit of cultivation and a little bit of nurturing comes in at, right? Again, a woman is not going to, because innately women are very in tune, most of us, very in tune with our ancestors, very in tune with the God presence. And when the God presence dwells within us, we're going to know when a man does not have the ability to lead us. We're going to know when this man not only does not have the God presence or God essence within him, generator, operator, destroyer. That means generating that bread to be able to keep this roof over my head. Operate yourself in the ways that a king should, and destroy all negativity that might seek to threaten or harm us, baby. So if a man doesn't have the God presence within him, there's something innate in a godly aligned, in a God essence aligned woman, that's gonna go off like a radar in her and say, this ain't it. He don't have it. He looks good. He's wearing about a 14, 15 shoe, but guess what? This ain't it. Right? So, and a God aligned woman is not going to submit to that. A God aligned woman is not going to just go with a man because he flashes some money or he picks her up in a nice car. Now you'll see these clips all over the internet with these women. They'll see the man's car, and then when he goes and pulls up, and they don't want to give the man no time of day. And then when he goes and gets inside this flamboyant car, then here come the woman wanting to run back over there. You all know what that is. Those aren't godly women, right? And again, when we're calling these things out, we're not calling it out in judgment. We're calling it out because something needs to be done, because the state of the melanated woman in America, and I don't know what's going on in other countries, although when I see a lot of the women, because remember, the internet is a huge looking glass, and we're able to see in different places of the world. And I'm going to tell you all something. It saddens my heart and it burdens my spirit when I see women in the deepest, almost remote parts of Africa, and they twerking. And I don't mean like the African dance twerk, but really trying to mimic what they see American women doing on the internet. It's like a disease. It's like something that is very sad. I'm glad I have one daughter and that she's grown. Because if I had to raise a daughter in this day and age, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to do it. Right. So, in wrapping this up, and I will do another talk on, yeah, they mimic the women here, Brother Malcolm. Yeah, they really do. They not only do not only do they mimic the women here, like you say, you find it with the Asian women. They do the same thing. The African women do the same thing. The Hispanic sisters, they in they in the class all by themselves, because they've been kind of like, we grew up top, right? And so about some Puerto Rican women, right? And so Latinas, they just like the melanated sisters. They just melanin in a different form. Okay. And again, when I see the aggression, and not the type of aggression that a lioness would have to protect her cubs, but the type of aggression that, like I said, when you see women being aggressive towards one another, and you see these clips where sisters are fighting and they're out here boxing like men, and they're in the streets, and they think that it's cool to just be doubling up, tripling up, five of them jumping one sister and kicking her all in her head and stomping her, and it saddens my spirit, and it burdens me. It's one of the reasons why I had to come out of this whole, just it burdens me. And I think that we begin to normalize, through social media, rewarding the performance. We've normalized a lot of these behaviors. And we've got to, and I would actually even put out a beacon to two groups of people. I would put out a beacon to the elder sisters. That means uh 45, 50 and up, maybe 50 and up. You would maybe perhaps be considered an elder. And I would put out a call to those of us that are considered, older, right? You got older and then you got elder. So between older and elder, I would say that we have to get back to the times where, 80s, the 90s, an old woman, would see you and, have a decent word for you, or, hey baby, why you got that skirt all crawling up your behind like that? And, if your mama seen you, and, those were the times that we could say something to somebody. Somebody could say something to us, and we would, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and different things like that. Nowadays, the young girls, they will fight you. Like, who you think you talking to, B? And fight you and different things like that. But you got to have no fear. You either going to be able to, help raise this nation or not. And then I will say this before I get out of here, because I think this is a very important for us to get, just as a society of people. And this may be a hard pill to swallow, because everybody is somebody, right? And I believe this, that everybody is somebody, right? But some of these bodies are trash. Some of these bodies are soulless beings in human form. And us, as the people that are calling by the name of the Most High, Whether you be a Rastafari, whether you be a Christian, whether you be a Muslim, whether you be a Buddhist, whether you be an Ifa priest or priestess, whatever your path spiritually that you are walking, we have to stay aligned with the God essence, generator, operator, destroyer. Whether that name you call it is Allah, whether that name you call it is Olodumare, whether that name you call it is Ixyabir, whether that name you call it is Buddha, whatever name you want to call that essence, that presence that aligns with the divine, we got to walk with that. And at this state, 2026, the state that humanity is in, real better start recognizing real. And when you see these soulless beings coming your way, stop trying to give them advice. Stop trying to show them love, because the devil don't want to show you no love. The evil that lives within men and women that walk this earth with us, who have the God dwelling within, we live in a dualistic realm. So recognize it. Stop aligning yourself with the trash. Take out the trash. It's trash day. It's bulk pickup day, brothers and sisters. Put your trash on the curb. And if you are a woman that is seeking to align yourself with godliness, with righteousness, then I invite you to come back to the divine within. Stop trying to align yourselves with what you see these sisters out here doing. Many of them will get the call and will not heed. Many of them will get the call and will not listen. Well, this isn't for them. This is for you. And for those whom you would share it with, this message, which I hope is loud and clear, is a call for you to come back to your divine femininity and truly walk in what it means to be a righteous woman, to be a good woman. Good. Spell that word, remove one O, then you've got G-O-D, generator, operator, destroyer. All right, brothers and sisters, listen, if you read the link in the description, you will see the link for our website. You could click on that website and you can get a session. You can get a session right now, not for long. Y'all know how I do. You can get your private consultation. And let me help you get back to that, because I'm going to be doing a conference really, really soon about aligning, getting these women back into a state of righteousness, because, listen, we got to start getting back to a state of righteousness, because the power that women hold in society, or the power that women have held historically throughout society, is a power that is unmatched. See, that power to heal is the power to lead. Because a broken nation, listen to me good, a broken, unhealed, damaged nation cannot rise. And if the women have the essence, the creativity, and the divinity to heal, then let's start healing our nation. All right. I love you all. I appreciate you all spending your hour with me. Do what's good and do something good for someone else. Again, check that link in the description. I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Peace and love.